soccer. So like the smell of the grass, like texture of the ball, or like when you hit the ball. Um, when you make it into like the net, the sound of it. So I would say soccer.
Nice. Is there a particular like event that you experienced that, like a game that you went to and you were like, wow, this is it?
Not a particular one, but I was goalie, so I wasn't like an outfield player or anything like that.
Nice, nice. So you're in the game with it. I like that, Sergio. Thanks for sharing. Let's go to you, Nestor.
Yeah, one thing that brings back a memory was a soccer stadium, the LA Galaxy one. So I used to work there, and every time I'd work there, you'd hear the fans, them chanting their team. Just like Sergio, like the sound of the goal net, just it's satisfying. It's so good whenever your team scores as well. It's pretty cool.
Nice, awesome. Thanks for sharing, Nestor. Rebecca.
Hi. So I was it last year? Last year I got the opportunity to go to the US Sumo Open at the Long Beach Pyramid. A friend had invited me, and it was a pretty amazing event just to see like the camaraderie between everybody who were, even though they were competing with each other, they were cheering each other on. Um, I've never watched sumo wrestling before, so it was like a learning experience too.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. We'll go to you, Jonathan.
Uh, so I can't remember a particular like sporting event because I'm not really fond of that. But can I share something like similar, like a concert?
Sure, sure.
So I went to like a Biba Doobie show, and I just I remember like everyone's just like so happy, and you know everyone's wearing like cool outfits and stuff, and it's just like uplifting vibe over there, and like the music's like really loud, and it's just like the people around us like cheering too. It's like kind of very uplifting.
Yes, the concerts can get really, really loud where you can hear the music in your bones, you know? Thanks for sharing that. Let's go to you, Chase, and then we'll go to you, Paying.
Yeah, I'd say just riding by like a baseball field and getting those nostalgic smells and like sounds of the ting of the ball or the grass or just the linen or the baseball mitt you wear. Just whenever I ride by, I get like a nostalgic feel of my childhood.
Indeed, that grass smells amazing. I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean. Paying. All right. A sporting event that brings back good memories for me is a soccer match I watched with my family when I was younger. It was a sunny day and the green grass on the field looked especially vibrant under the sunlight. The air was filled with the smell of grilled sausage and popcorn, accompanied by the cheers of the crowd, making the atmosphere incredibly exciting. The seats in the stands were a bit hard, but holding a cold drink and a warm food in hand made those little discomforts insignificant. The intensity and thrill of the match are still vivid in my mind, especially the moment when the entire crowd cheered together for the team. It was truly an unforgettable experience. Yes, thank you for sharing that in the chat, Paying. And that is very descriptive. Thank you for writing that. It's lovely to like when you're reading, writing about an experience, you know. It's one thing to hear it, but seeing it on paper is really cool. Thank you for writing that out. And yeah, you know, it's really the smell of the food in the air, the cheer of the crowds, and even the sun, you know, it's crazy because it was hot yesterday. But those little discomforts are definitely insignificant when you're having a good time and you're just vibing out with the experience. Thank you for sharing. Let's go to you, Dre, and then we'll go to Jorge.
I can go first.
I don't see who that is talking.
Oh, this is Jorge. I think you
Okay.
said Dre and
There's
then
two
Jorge,
Jorges.
but
Cool deal. We'll go to Jorge Montiel.
Jorge, Jorge Montiel.
Okay, cool.
Yes. One of the memories that I have, it's when I went to San Diego to the Petco Park. It was really great. I went with my dad. I was like 15 years old. It was like 10 years ago, probably more. But my dad took my sister and I to watch one of the Dodgers Padres games. We were living in San Diego at the time, so we were like go Padres, and it was a great experience. It was my first time like going to the Petco Park, and I remember it was pretty sunny, so um that definitely helped. There was music, and it was like one of the first times that like all of my senses were pretty active. You know, like I was like pretty alert of everything. Like there's a lot of like noise. There's like a lot of noises, like a lot of music, a lot of lights, a lot of like all my senses were pretty
Indeed. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm a Padre fan too. I'm from San Diego, so people give me a lot of flack for being a Raider fan, but believe it or not, there's a lot of Raider fans in San Diego. But I hold it down for San Diego by being a Padre fan for sure. And Petco Park is really cool. I like the they have like a park space there where you can watch the game and chill on the lawn. And I really think that that's a nice feature in their landscape and the architecture of that stadium. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jorge.
Go Padres.
Go Padres. Dre, feel free to share in the chat, but we'll go to Jorge Ramirez and then Claudia Naranjo.
If Dre's not ready, I can go.
Go ahead, Jorge.
Okay. So I grew up a Dodgers fan, and probably my favorite memory, although I love Dodger Stadium, was probably when I went to Fenway a couple years ago. It was right after we had lost I want to say it was 2018 World Series to them. So being at their field with, that same team was a lot of fun. Plus it's like super historic. So I do remember it was just super humid, but it was a lot of fun being there.
Indeed, those insignificant discomforts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Claudia?
Hi, yes. Well, I don't want to say I grew up a Dodger fan. I became a Dodger fan maybe like 10, 15 years ago. And that was because of my siblings. They were very into sports, and some of my friends were very into the Dodgers. One of the memories I have or sporting event I attended was actually at Dodger Stadium. I think it was Julio Urias's bobblehead night. And what made it, I guess, significant in my mind was that he brought out or had this band playing for him that was very famous in Mexico and was slowly getting fame in here in the United States. And I think that pushed him over to get a little bit more fame here. And I went with my dad, and some of like the sights and the smells and the sounds were, the music coming from them, and the smells, of course, like the food, and having a conversation with my dad about the game, about the band, and it was very special, very significant for me.
Nice, nice. I can't think of the band. There was a band yesterday, and they did a really good job, and they're actually like booked to, I guess, play all the Chargers home games. I was like, well, that's a booking. That's really cool. But yeah, music in relation to these experiences, I think goes hand in hand. And it's definitely, it adds to the vibes. But definitely thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing in the chat, Dre. Hope you feel better soon. I love going to the Dodger games, and they are always so exciting because the fans will always cheer the team on, especially now that Shohei is on the team. There's more excitement and pride in our city for our team. The stadium is beautiful. You can be walking around or in a lounge, and it still will be very nice. You can always smell the food, like the hot dogs and pizza. Depending on the time of day, you can feel the heat of the sun or the coolness that the wind sends your way since it's at the top of a hill. Yeah, it's really cool about Dodger Stadium. The Dodger Dogs are like world renowned. I have yet to experience the Dodger Stadium, so I have to make that happen soon. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And it looks like there's different, parts of the experience you have. Have a regular seat, or you can be in a lounge, and it creates a very nice vibe for you. Something that I thought was really interesting yesterday was that there were a lot of queues or lines, right? But they were very short, or they went really fast. So however they designed the stadium and situated all of the food courts and the stores, it's really, really interesting how fast those lines. Thank you again for sharing in the chat, Dre. Let's go to you, Rocio, and then we'll go to Randy.
Mine was a concert too. It was also, I think, at the Petco. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I feel like it, like being out in the open gave a total different vibe. You could see kind of like the sunset going down, the concert, the loud music, just like fresh air and the city skyline too. So I think that's kind of what I got from it.
Yeah, Petco Park is in a really nice location in the downtown area of San Diego, and the water's not too far from there. So it's really cool to really take in all of the beautiful sunsets and skyline vibes that you get when you're attending events in the gas lamp and downtown area. Thank you for sharing. Who's next?
It's me.
All right.
The memory for me would be at the Coliseum in LA when I saw Argentina play Costa Rica.
Nice.
And it was just a really cool experience because, Argentina's the World Cup champions, and I got to see some of my favorite players.
All right, let's go to Carla, and then we'll go to Isaac.
Hello. So, unlike everyone here, I'm not too much of big of a sports fan, but if I had to pick like the most memorable memory for me, was growing up in the Philippines. We had like community basketball games. So they're, like these big games. They're just in the streets, and that they're full on courts, but you definitely know the players, and you know that they've been working hard. So it's a big investment to like the whole community. So when it's game time, everyone just kind of gathers, and it's at night because it's a little cooler in the Philippines at night. And you see bright lights, and you can hear everything and just yelling, and just the whole community is there. So, and as a little kid, you're like trying to look through everybody. So that's what I remember.
That's so cool. I love how sports can bring community together. I know in like Texas, right? Football is really, really big. It becomes like this gathering of all the community, and Friday night lights is where to be at. And it sounds like it gives that same vibe for the basketball event in the Philippines. I think I came across the video that was depicting what it sounds like you were describing. I have to confirm that it was in the Philippines, but it was really cool because it was just a beautiful mixture of community members, and everybody was getting their ball on, and it was just really fantastic to kind of see that. I would say diversity in the gathering of community to play this like sport together,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you for sharing. Let's go to you, Isaac.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I'd say my
first sporting event was LA Coliseum. I went to go watch a Mexico soccer game. That was really cool. I was a little scared too because we were way up high. Uh, but also, one of my favorite things about the Coliseum is that it's right next to the Rose Park. So going to the Coliseum or going to the Rose Park was always nice.
Nice. Being up high like that, it can be really intense. Yeah, yeah. It feels like you just fall over, right? So yeah, no, I feel you on that. Let's go to you, Issy, and then we'll go to Jamie.
Hey everyone. This isn't a memory from a stadium, but I do remember driving home during the 2017 World Series, and I was stuck in traffic. So I was listening to the game on the radio, and I realized that the person in the car next to me was doing the same thing. So they had their window kind of like half rolled down, and they rolled it all the way down, and we sort of started listening to the game together in traffic. And even if we weren't at the stadium, it still felt like this communal experience. So that's always been a really funny sports memory.
Yeah, that sounds like a really cool experience where you're not connected to people, but through this experience of sporting events, you built that bond and that relationship at that like on the freeway, right? In the middle of traffic, probably one of the most frustrating times, but you were able to connect with somebody over this collective experience of the Dodgers being at the World Series. That's amazing. Jamie?
I don't really watch sports games, but I've been to the SoFi Stadium for a concert. It's really cool. It was my first time there. Um, and it was really cool to see how big it was. Um, and like I went for a Twice concert, so it was really cool to hear everyone like yelling the lyrics to the songs, and like I was in the back, I was in the very back, but it still felt really fun.
Yeah, I feel like SoFi Stadium makes you feel like you're like still in it, no matter where you are in the stadium, which is a really cool feel to it as well. But who did you say you saw there? I know it's like not too many people that could fill out that SoFi Stadium.
Um, who did I see?
I can guess.
Oh, no, no, no. It's like a K-pop group. Their name is Twice.
K-pop Twice.
Yeah,
Awesome. Yes, K-pop definitely brings folks out for sure.
yeah. It's
Thank you
fun.
for sharing.
Thank you.
Let's go to you, May, and then we'll go to Manuel. Awesome. Thanks for sharing in the chat, May. All the soccer tournaments I went to growing up bring back good memories. The sounds of the soccer balls being kicked and the other team shouting make it so exciting. I am always so like admirable of soccer players because I feel like, at least in the way that I imagine soccer is played, it feels like soccer is probably the most athletic sport. You have to use the majority of your body, and then you're like running back and forth. It seems like nonstop forever. I don't even know how many quarters are in soccer, but I think it's what, 2 halves or 4 quarters. I don't know but shout out to anyone who plays soccer. I used to play when I was a lot younger and a lot lighter, and I miss those days. But shout out to people that are on that field. Let's go. Did I say Manuel? Let's go to you, Manuel.
Yeah, for me, a memory would be going to an LAFC game, a soccer game, and it was like the last game of the season. And so the atmosphere was just like really like it was really like everybody was pumped, everybody was excited, like we were just all jumping up and down, and it was like a 3-0 route. So everybody was just really happy, and the stadium was still kind of brand new, so it was pretty small, but like the atmosphere definitely made up for it. So it's always a cool one.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Let's go to you, Javier, and then we'll go to you, Abdul.
All right, hi, how are you doing?
Good. And yourself?
I'm doing good. So I think a memory for me
I guess you could say about sports is the last time I went to, I believe it was SoFi when the Packers played the what do you call it? The Rams, and we lost in the end by a field goal. That was my first football game I ever gone to. I think it was 2 years ago. And it was a great experience, you know. I felt like, you know, the fans are like the Rams fans, for example. They're really passionate. So like felt like if I was wearing like my Packer gear or whatever, right? Like they used to like trash talk and throw food at you and stuff. But other than that, you know, I had a good experience and just hopefully I could go again soon to a game.
Not throwing food at you.
Well, yeah, of course not. You know, it was really uncomfortable, but you know, we took that, we lost, so you know, I guess that's the way they like celebrating at times.
Right? That sounds like an experience for sure. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Abdul?
Yeah, I guess a good memorable sporting event I went to was, I think it was last year or 2 years ago. It was the Kings versus Warriors game 2 playoffs. And then it was just really nice seeing like it was really loud in there because it was a pretty close game in the last 2 minutes. And just like the smell of like all the food of people around me because I was pretty close to the bench. You can see all of them just yelling at the players too. It was a fun experience.
Hockey games sound like I haven't been to one, but I imagine them to be very fun and exciting to like experience the thrill of, from like the scoring and the plays that are made, and sometimes even the fighting that happens. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Abdul. Henry, if you have not gone, and let's go to Randy.
Hello?
Yes.
I would say my favorite sporting event was when I went to Mexico to go see the Clásico. It's pretty much the two biggest teams from Mexico, Chivas versus America. It was my first time ever going to a soccer game in a different country, and the atmosphere was completely different from the games here, from the fan event and before the game, during the game, hearing the Chivas fans cheer our team. Unfortunately, we did lose pretty badly, but I mean, it was still a nice memories going to Mexico to see a game.
So I've seen a few videos, and I don't know. I don't know if they do it like that big here in America. I wonder if the fire marshal allows it. But you know how like the crowd gets to lighting things on fire, and it just looks like a ball of fire in the stadium. Did that happen at all?
I think they did it once, but it's like here they try to stop the fans to do that because of the fire reasons. I went to a game earlier this year and they did that here and they suspended the game.
Wow, they shut the game down before they said, wow. Yeah, see, they don't play that, but I've seen that a few times in videos. I thought it was like a fire, and it was like, whoa, they're celebrating. I'm like, wow, that is the celebration for sure. That sounds like an experience. But no, thank you for sharing. Let's go to Melissa and then Yael. Or did you share, Randy?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, cool deal. Let's go.
Okay, so I have a lot of good experiences with the games, but I think the most memorable one was when I started to do the box seats. Because when you go to the box seats, they come with the carts and they have food, and then they have the drinks, and then they have the dessert cart. And then not everybody stays in the box, like to, party with all your friends or whatever. They go out and then they go into like, there's a different level for like a restaurant up there for just the people that have box seats. So I feel like that's a whole nother party, and everybody's kind of like mingling and still watching the game. And then also you can go up to where like they have a level where you can go shopping. So I was like drinking, shopping, eating, dessert, screaming. I was like, wow, this is really fun. So I guess it's sitting in the box seats is really fun. And then without the box seats, I like SoFi Stadium because I think that one's really impressive, especially when you're walking up with the water. And I don't know, it's very calming before you like hit the party. So
Indeed. It sounds like you could do some multitasking up with the box seats, right?
yeah,
A bit of shopping in, go to a restaurant. No, that sounds like a vibe for sure. VIP section,
like doing it all.
right? Lovely, lovely. Thanks for sharing. I'm not sure if Randy got a chance to share yet. Definitely feel free to put something in the chat. But let's go to Yael. So thank you for sharing, Randy. Sorry about that.
Hello everyone. My name is Yael, and so my favorite sport is soccer. So the memories that I have are from going to soccer games. I'm from Tijuana, so I usually go to the Estadio Caliente to watch the Cholos play. And I don't know, like what are the sides? I think it's kind of cool when you have like full house and like the stadium is packed. Um, I don't know, it's just like a lot of people know in like a relatively small place. And yeah, like there's a lot of smells, like food. Sometimes like vendors pass by and they're carrying, like different kind of foods and you get like the smell of it. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nice. Thank you for sharing, Yael. Let's go to you, Zuriel, and then we'll go to you, Patty.
Hello. My favorite sport is soccer, and my favorite memory is when I went with my brother and my father to the Rose Bowl Stadium to go watch Mexico play.
Nice. Thanks for sharing, Zuriel. Patty?
Hello. For me, I'd have to say, also the Dodgers Stadium, only because my dad would take us, me and my brother when we were younger. So now going back as an adult, it just brings back memories for when we used to go as kids.
Nice, nice. Very nostalgic, right? Let's go to you, Entree, and then we'll go to you, Philip.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
I've only ever been to one sporting event. It was for the Dodgers last year. It was for Filipino night. So I went with some friends because they had an extra ticket. So they were like, "Hey, Miguel, you want to just come?" So I came. So that was my first time experiencing the stadium. It was cool. It was nice seeing all the fans. This was before I believe Shohei Ohtani joined the team, so it wasn't as full as it is, I would say now. But yeah, pretty much it.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Entree. Philip?
Oh, hey everyone. Yeah, mine's also Dodger Stadium. When I was a kid playing Little League, like we had a coach for a couple years that apparently had the hookup and would, just buy us box seats. Not going to date myself too much, but in fairness, like box seats back in the day were a little bit cheaper. Uh, and it was neat. Like I remember when you're up that close, like you see how like crisply the grass is cut, like everything is, very good contrast. I think like I don't remember the hot Dodger dog so much. Like I think I remember for some reason Tommy's burgers. I think the coach would take us out to Tommy's a lot. Probably wasn't trying to spend the money on the Dodger dogs. So kind of, remember hitting in the batting cages as a kid, like it just the pain of making contact with the ball. Oh man. So lots of good nostalgia when I was a kid. I think to be fair, like as a grown-up and as a landscape design or architecture student, kind of really vibe with Petco and especially Oracle up in San Francisco more. Like I feel like they're a little bit more tied into the systems, like the tied, it's easier to just hop off a train and literally walk right in. But maybe someone in this room will do that for Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, they're trying to take people through the air from what is it? From one of the Metro links from the LA Metro to Dodger Stadium. I think they're having a lot of conversation about that.
Yeah, that gondola, I think from like the Chinatown
Uh-huh.
station.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, to that walk like over the hill, especially when it's hot. Like I would say that's starting to be a bit of a significant inconvenience. You know?
Something to help that out, right?
Yeah, yeah,
All right, cool deal.
yeah.
Cool deal. Well, we'll have a couple of people share out and then we'll move on. There'll be some more opportunities to share out with some other questions we'll have regarding the walkthrough. But really appreciate everyone that had a chance to share during the icebreaker. Let's go to you, Maya, and we'll close it out with Madison.
Hi. Um, I don't really go to a lot of sporting events, but this summer when I was in Paris at a park, I was watching a big chess match going on, and that was really cool because I don't speak French, and it was the only time I felt like I was really understanding what was going on. So I just enjoyed watching that and sitting in the park and observing everything that was going on.
That's a really cool connection to make with someone who you kind of share, like, let's just say a language barrier with, being able to connect through play, right? Playing common games like chess. That sounds like a great experience, Maya. Thank you for sharing. Madison, you want to bring us home?
Yeah, so I'm also not a huge sports fan, but my siblings are, and my parents surprised us with going to Las Vegas to see the Aces versus the Dallas Wings like January or no, it was July last year. And it was really fun because it was just being around my family who were excited about it was what made me enthusiastic for it.
Indeed, that building memories, right, to share is a big part of it too. Even if you're not too big on the sporting event, being together with family and friends and all of the memories that you collect, the funny jokes that you come up with, or those inside jokes that you create from those moments are always great. Thank you all again for sharing. For the sake of time, we'll go ahead and move on. I want to talk through some of the experiences you all had with your community walkthrough. Give me a thumbs up if you all had a chance to complete that assignment. I know everybody's thumbs are about to go up. Okay, we have one or two people, one or two thumbs. I'll go ahead and ask again just in case. The community walkthrough assignment. Yeah, no worries about submitting it. Just the fact that you did the activity. Thumbs up if you did the activity of walking through your community. Okay, more thumbs up are coming. All right, all right, all right. Y'all have some more time to submit it, but we are going to talk through some of these questions together so we can get a take on what were some of the things we learned. So, what was most surprising to you about this assignment and why? For those of you all who weren't aware, this assignment is due, I think today. It was posted last Monday. During Labor Day on Canvas. But it is there, so definitely complete the assignment and turn it in at your earliest convenience. But yeah, so what was most surprising to you about this assignment and why? Feel free to respond in the chat or to come off or, unmute your mics. I'll give a few folks a chance to, volunteer, but I'm okay with picking on folks. So I'll give y'all a couple of seconds to speak up.
Um, I can go first.
Yeah, go ahead, jump in there.
I joined the class on Thursday, so I wasn't able to do it, but I did walk to my through my neighborhood so I can answer the questions as I read them. What was the most surprising uh what was most surprising to you about this assignment and why? Um, oh, is there like a script for the assignment?
Yeah, there were some questions posted online,
Oh,
but generally speaking, doing a community walkthrough, let's just say, what is most surprising about your community when you walk through it? Was there anything that you saw or experienced that was surprising to you when you walked through your community for the first time, or like, during a walk one day? Some folks walk every 15-minute walks every day. Like sometimes when you do a walkthrough, you experience something or you see something that you were surprised about.
Oh, I see. Yes. Well, I have a little puppy. His name is Lucas, and we usually walk through the neighborhood. We walk at least one time a day, 15 minutes. So I do walk through the neighborhood. And some of the things that I notice, it's on the corners, the houses, they are not allowed to have the fence all the way to the corner, like in 90 degrees, because of visibility issues. So that's something interesting. They use vegetation instead. And that was something interesting that I saw the other day. They use like um small shrubs for clear visibility. And then something else that I noticed on my neighborhood, it's we live on a hill, so it's really challenging to walk around the neighborhood in some areas. If you're walking downhill, well, it's pretty easy, but if you're walking uphill, it's quite challenging, and the slope can get really, really hard to walk with to go with the slope, right? Those are some of the things that I noticed in the neighborhood.
Thank you for sharing, Jorge. Anybody else want to jump in and share before I start picking on folks? What are things that surprise you when you walk through your neighborhood? Sights, sounds, engagements that you have with folks, experiences. I think there's some folks responding in the chat. I did my walkthrough when it was about 103 degrees outside. It really made me notice the lack of shade in the neighborhood and the need for more plantings. Melissa Montoya. Oh, that was first, that was Maya Sharon. Thank you for sharing, Maya. And then Melissa Montoya says, what was most surprising for my community walkthrough was it was not actually open to the public. I had to call and set up a time to go inside my local public food garden. Once I got there, it was well kept, but not aesthetically pleasing to look at. Everything seemed just put there, but seemed no grouping of types of food or plants, just everywhere. Thank you for sharing, Melissa. Thank you. Abdul, what I noticed throughout my walkthrough, and also whenever I drive through my neighborhood, is how poor of a condition the roads are. I live in Pomona, and there are a lot of streets that have bumps and cracks everywhere. And an example of this is Hope Avenue. Yes, yes. There are probably folks that know all about Hope Avenue. Thanks for sharing, Abdul. Um, Melissa adds, I would prioritize more shade and adding native plants. Thank you for sharing that. I went through my neighborhood, walked through near my neighborhood. I feel there's a lack of area, natural parks. Most of the areas, residential homes. Hopefully there could be more balance of area to take family and kids, maybe more parks. Yes, that's good. Carla, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so I actually live in an interesting neighborhood in San Diego where I'm in the border of City Heights and Kensington. So I see the two different neighborhoods. And to those of you that are not familiar with San Diego, City Heights is a more underserved per se community, and Kensington is a little bit more on the middle class. So I live right on the border, and then when I walk through Kensington, it's everything was a little bit more upkept, or like very like the sidewalks were less, there's less cracks and less potholes, but clear lines are, when you're in City Heights, like there's a lot more trash, a lot more potholes, a lot more overgrown plants that are blocking the sidewalks as well. So I find that really interesting. And just like everyone said, like I did my walk as well this morning, so it was really hot. So I noticed all the palm trees that does not have any shade. that produce all the little fruits right now that are dropping. So it's like almost every block, they're everywhere.
So no trade-off with the tree, right? Where it's just there, it's just having all these droppings everywhere that folks have to go get their car washed or, sweep up in front of their house, but no trade-off to where it's really providing anything of value. And then also thinking about the groundwater too, and the different ways that it pulls resources from the natural flora and fauna that are there. No, thank you for sharing that, Carla. Thank you so much for sharing that. Some more folks in the chat. Feel free to raise your hand and I'll call on you if you want to share. I'll read some more of these in the chat. I went through on the. So, okay, yeah, we shared that. Thank you for sharing, Javier. Dre wrote, I noticed how little trees there are on the sidewalks and the amount of broken sidewalks that they are. Yeah, and that interferes with accessibility as well. Paying put in the chat, thank you for sharing, Paying. Me, the most about this assignment is that I live in a relatively new community, yet many residents have chosen to decorate their front yards with artificial grass. This was unexpected because I assumed that people in newer communities would prefer natural greenery. That's a good point. I know a lot of places here in Southern California, especially if you're like a part of the HOA, they may have, requirements. However, what that looks like in implementation could, be different. Instead of fake grass, I know some folks are putting natural flora and fauna. So it'd be really dope to see, more of those residents having natural flora and fauna versus artificial grass. But thinking about grass is not native, right, to Southern California, and it doesn't do well in Mediterranean environments. So it does take a lot to manage like a green lawn in this type of atmosphere. Thank you for sharing, Paying. Anybody else want to share? We have, you can answer and respond to any of these questions. A question I am interested in hearing is like, which stakeholder groups did you identify? And just to give some insight about stakeholder groups, I think it was talked about in the assignment, give it a description there, but stakeholders, like residents, you have workers, right? The mailman, you may have workers who are doing landscaping, you may have businesses in your community, stakeholders, you may have city workers, folks that are doing the gas and electric for the city or whatever. So what stakeholder groups did you experience? What would you prioritize in regards to like a landscape intervention focus? And also, what did you learn about your community landscape that you didn't know before? So feel free to answer any of those questions either in the chat or by raising your hand. So Entree put in the chat, what I noticed on my community walkthrough is how many people love this one coffee shop. The line was insane just for coffee. I go here in the morning during the weekday, so it isn't so busy. So it was surprising how many people line up to get this. There are more hardscapes than landscapes in my community. The 6th Street Bridge brings in a lot of runners. Yes, it's so, 6th Street Bridge, it's a beautiful, I think, part of the city. It's unfortunate the vandalism that it's experienced over the last several months doesn't light up anymore. I actually worked for the Civil Rights Department in the city of Los Angeles, and we had a chance to light it up for our LA for All event a couple of years in a row. And fortunately, that probably won't be happening anytime soon because of the lead that's been stolen from the lights and stuff from the fixtures. And that could be a design challenge too, right? Safety and whether or not folks will not try to steal everything from it. So that's a really great share. The 6th Street Bridge does have a lot of different businesses right there. So it sounds like a lot of folks like that coffee shop that you mentioned. And then also the hardscape component, right? There isn't a lot of green space in that area. So that is a good point out that you made. It was nice when it was lit up during the night, and now it's sad driving during the night. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I noticed we're supposed to be submitting images on a discussion board, but it doesn't but I don't see one available. Well, we'll have to work through that. How was that? Oh, you know what? Okay, then that may be why we need to use a Padlet link. So I will adjust that so that folks can submit images in their assignments on Padlet, because the images is a great way to connect with the experience. So if you cannot upload them onto Canva, I'll go ahead and put the Padlet link up so that folks can submit that assignment on Padlet as well. And then you all can see each other's assignments and what you all posted. 6th Street Bridge, beautiful, but could use some shade and more safety for cyclists. Agreed, Philip. Thank you for sharing that. Any other share outs for these questions? Any stakeholder groups that thank you, Rocio. Stakeholders, HOA, school district, city council. Yes, you want to talk a little bit more about that, Rocio?
Yeah, I remember when my cousins were still in high school, they were talking about how like in my community, some of the high schools or all three schools are basically like near like the dairy industry. So like I know they were having uh like the district was having talks with the farmers of possibly getting them to move like their industry somewhere else. So I was thinking they have like the voice of like making it happen, basically. Um, Also like city council, they can put like from people going into city council, they can kind of put things into effect by making them like a priority for the city. And then the HOA, kind of like how you said, they kind of want to maintain their images. So if there's like inaccessibility issues for like disabled people, they can kind of fix that like sooner than someone who's probably in a community who doesn't have an HOA.
This is true. One, a lot of locations we live are within the jurisdiction of a city, municipality, or a county. And there's a lot of, resources, services, and programs that come from those municipalities or counties to address what needs come up for their residents. So in the county of Los Angeles, there's a lot of municipalities, but for the sake of this example, let's talk about the city of Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles sits within the county. So it has both the 15 council members that are part of the city of Los Angeles, but it also has 5 supervisors as well, right? So each supervisor has areas of the county that it's over. A lot of Los Angeles is under a supervision 2, supervision district 2. I'm not really, the way to say that is leaving me at this moment, but supervisory district 2, I think is that, it's not coming to me. Oh my gosh, I know who that is. She used to be a senator for the state of California. She's now a supervisor in council district, supervisor district 2. I can't believe I can't think of her name right now. But yeah, we have all women for the county level. Holly Mitchell. Thank you, Philip. Thank you. Thank you so much. So Holly Mitchell is over a lot of the city of Los Angeles and does a lot of work at the county level. But again, within the city of Los Angeles, you have 15 different council offices, which depending on which council you're a part of, you can address whatever issues, concerns, potholes, maybe you want slower streets and are thinking about having them install speed bumps. You may want to install more disability parking on your street, right? All those things can be requested through your city councils or your supervisory districts, and there's support that would come with that. So yeah, that's a big stakeholder. A lot of the infrastructure that we're experiencing, whether it be streets, lighting, street sweeping, sanitation, all of those services and programs oftentimes come through the county or the city. And so they oftentimes are the stakeholder you want to engage in. As a designer, many times you want to ensure that policy alignment in context of what is happening at the city or county level is related to your design. Manuel?
Yeah, I just had a question. I live near a hospital. Would that be considered a stakeholder group for the community? Because I'm like 2 minutes away. It's in the neighborhood, so would that count?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a big part of the community makeup, right? And the hospital could be a part of some of the design considerations you're making as far as making sure that there's, you know, traffic lights that are considerate of the fact that sometimes you have ambulance and fire trucks coming through that area to get people healthcare, right? So those may be a big part of what design considerations you make. So definitely that's a strong stakeholder. So hospitals, schools, businesses, right? Those are definitely stakeholders to consider. Anybody else want to share out before we move on? Awesome. I have some more in the chat. Rebecca, I live in a community that has a lot of old homes and large trees within the residential area. The older trees are amazing, but have messed up the sidewalk in many areas. There have been an attempt to fix it, but it could be better. Along the main busy street and the area that connect to the public transportation, there's a lack of shade. I would add more trees and planting along the busier streets, especially near the bus stops. There is also one street that is pretty busy that could benefit from more pedestrian crossing. I often see people crossing where there isn't a crosswalk and have done so myself. Stakeholders would be the city council members, businesses along the busy street, residents using public transportation, schools in the neighborhood. Awesome, awesome. Thank you for sharing. All right, yeah, thank you all for sharing out some of those experiences during the community walkthrough. Make sure you all access the assignment on Canva and upload it as soon as possible. It seems like you can add pictures. There just needs to be a couple of things on the back end that need to get done. So I will work on that and work on sending an email just to confirm that it was done. But definitely complete the assignment and upload it as soon as possible. All right, so right now we're gonna get into our lecture. I want to go ahead and share this video with you all. I want you all to confirm that you can hear the sound.
One day you're in the mountains walking past a lake and see a fish.
Can y'all hear the sound?
Fish that's near death.
Yeah.
I wonder what's wrong with that fish. On your walk the next day, there's another fish sick and dying. And day after day, as you walk past the lake, there's even more fish that are sick and dying. I thought something was wrong with the fish, but I wonder if something's wrong with the lake. As you travel through the mountains, each lake you come to has the same scene, a lot of fish that are sick and dying. I was focusing on the fish, but now I wonder, is something wrong with the source of the water in that region that is making the fish sick? Maybe it's the groundwater that's feeding the lakes in the area. This analogy, developed by the Racial Equity Institute, illustrates our tendency to tie social problems to individual behaviors and decisions, the sick fish. However, racism and other forms of oppression in our history, systems, structures, and policies are the root causes, the groundwater of these inequalities, the polluted lake. These systems and structures shape the opportunities people have to be healthy and thrive in each community, the jobs available and who has access to them, the quality of schools and how that impacts and influences student success, the access to, affordability, and use of healthcare, the neighborhoods and spaces where people live, work, and play, and the ways people interact with each other in all of those settings, all of which are under the umbrella of the term social determinants of health. These are the kinds of conditions and the environments in which people are born, grow, live, learn, work, and worship that affect health. There are three major ways in which social determinants may affect specific populations. First, differences in exposure. Everyone is vulnerable to stress and environmental toxins. However, certain population groups, because of structural inequalities and racism, experience differences in economics, employment, education, and housing, and may be more likely than others to be exposed to social and physical environments that are harmful, stressful, and compromise their health. For example, people of color and poor people are more likely to live closer to where toxic chemicals are produced, processed, or stored. As a result, a family or entire community can be impacted by unsafe drinking water, polluted air, or other contaminants. Second, differences in vulnerability. A family's ability to fix the source of contamination makes them more vulnerable than other families to health problems. The family may not realize their water is unsafe. When they do, the family and other community members contact the service provider to advocate for resolution, but are offered no options to mitigate the problem. Adults and children in the family may get sick. Third, differences in consequences. Differences in wealth, social standing, connectedness, and other factors can lead to very different outcomes where health issues are concerned. Communities with social networks that do not include policy decision makers may have a harder time making changes and a tougher time escaping the harms that exist in their neighborhoods and workplaces. For a family with higher income and social standing, unsafe water may be a short-term annoyance until they get resolution from the service provider or move to a home with safer water. However, a family with lower income has limited options. This family may have no other option but to remain in their home, identify alternate ways to access safe water, and continue to fight for mitigation for months or even years. Continued exposure to unsafe water and the inability to pay for regular health care or medical treatment will result in severe illness or worse. The difference can result in diminished health for multiple family members, job loss, homelessness, and additional consequences for the children. Social determinants affect us all. The era of COVID spotlights our collective vulnerability and dependence on one another. Our humanity is threatened when one death is treated as a tragedy, while 1 million deaths are brushed off as a statistic. We have to appreciate the value of everyone's lives. When thinking about social determinants of health, emphasize health equity. Let's think about health equity in a way that's forward-looking, focuses on assets, yet recognizes and accounts for systems and historical injustice. You may often hear the term health inequalities or disparities when it comes to talking about differences in health outcomes. Let's instead shift our focus from disparity to equity. Health equity is the assurance of the conditions needed to be healthy for all people, regardless of identity. Dr. Kamara Jones offers a framework and checklist for identifying equity-minded solutions. Achieving health equity requires valuing all individuals and populations equally, and recognizing and rectifying historical injustices, while also providing the necessary resources according to need. Health disparities will be eliminated when health equity is achieved. To make health equity a reality, we must think critically about the social determinants impacting health. Ask yourself, what are the structural factors that influence the capacity of individuals or populations to reach their full potential for health and well-being? Instead of only looking at the fish, look at the polluted lake and think about the groundwater. Pay attention, be aware of, and create strategies that reach beyond the surface to make the most meaningful steps towards health equity. Learn more about how others are tackling social determinants of health at these resources.
We should be back on the presentation. And I have a few questions, and after these questions, we'll go on a quick break. But let's go ahead and get through these questions about the video. What were your key takeaways from the social determinants of health video? I'm gonna pick on a few people. Let's go to you, Isaac. I don't know why you're. We'll go to Isaac and then Carla. You might be on mute, Isaac. And we can go to you, Carla, first if Isaac is not ready.
Yeah, so the key takeaway for me that is that Black or colored people lives closer to like more pollutants and like things that could harm them versus wealthy people, and the fact that I didn't really think about that wealthy people can have more options and more access. If something does happen to them, they have options on what to do with their lives. I think those are some of the things that stood out to me.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Carla.
Hey, sorry, I'm back. Sorry about that.
No problem. Go ahead, Isaac.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of, I forgot what it was last semester. We spoke about how there are more trees and shade in richer areas than there is in poorer areas. So that's one of the things that it reminded me of, is that I guess communities with higher income have better and more trees than poor areas.
And that directly translates to the air quality that they experience, as well as even the soil quality, because a lot of plants and plants and trees clean carbon out the air. Carbon drawdown is a big thing. So if you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of plants or trees, not only are you missing out on, just the aesthetic experience of it, but you also have lower air quality, and then also lower soil quality as well. So the ability to plant, produce or anything that you can eat will be more challenging in these communities as well, especially if the groundwater or the soil is polluted, which oftentimes is the case in these underserved communities because of how they're regulated. What's coming up for other folks? What were some of the key takeaways from the social determinants of health video? Manuel?
Yeah, so for me, some of like the key takeaways was the idea that like not like most problems, they're way more complicated and there's way more things to it than you like what's on the surface, like what you see. And I feel like that was really big like takeaway for me, because that's what I feel like a lot of people fall into. They just see the like very surface, and they're just like, oh, it's that person's problem and it's not mine, and it's just always been like that. But when you actually look back and you actually look into the problem itself, you see that there's like all these different factors, all these different things happening, and sometimes even surprisingly, you find that you may have like unknowingly, accidentally taken part or not. But just the idea that things are way more there's more to some to certain like issues. And that most people don't notice that. They fall into it's just the superficial thing. Yeah.
Indeed. The analogy in the video I thought was very helpful. And I really appreciated how they looked to, nature and the environment to convey it. But, they talked about how sometimes folks tend to blame the fish, right, for being sick versus looking at the lake or the groundwater. And I think that's significant for a couple of reasons. One, it's a good analogy, but it really plays into your role as a landscape architect in regards to like how you get to interact with the environment in a lot of these spaces, because you're introducing design interventions that could, like you're saying, Manuel, add to the problem or be part of the solution, right? And that's a interesting role to play in. But I think on the other side of that, which oftentimes I think is a big takeaway, is when folks realize that they were impacted negatively by this type of infrastructure. A lot of times when folks experience this, they're like, wow, I didn't think of it, but I lived in a community that was, disproportionately impacted by pollution. So that's an interesting takeaway as well. I think someone put in the chat, Claudia, awesome. Key takeaways: colored people live closer to areas that have less options on what to do if there is an issue with any water issues that lead to health issues. This is important to a landscape architect because we can design areas that would improve air quality and soil quality in areas do not have a lot of trees. This can help with prioritizing design considerations by prioritizing health issues involved in the community. Spot on, Claudia. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm gonna pick on a couple of more folks before we go on break. Let's go to you, Chase, and then Melissa. And then let's hear from you, Philip.
For the key takeaways?
Yes. Well, we could go to the next question. Why is it important? Why is this important to a landscape architect?
Okay. Well, understanding social determinants of health allows you to see how like the built environment can affect the community's health. Like for instance, designing in a neighborhood with limited access to green space can promote physical activity, but like otherwise, incorporating accessible pathways can address like issues of mobility with those with disabilities.
That's a good point. You can see that in a lot of urban landscapes now. There's more consideration for people with disabilities on different, levels. But one significant infrastructure change are the indentions in the sidewalk that allow folks in wheelchairs to get onto the sidewalk. For a long time, those did not exist. You had to kind of like move towards where there was the indention for cars, right? But they didn't have that for folks, let's say, that need to access the corners with wheelchairs. So that's a big point there. And again, for whoever's responding, feel free to respond to any of these questions here that you want to respond to. So we had a couple of folks in line. I know I had asked, Melissa and then Philip. And feel free to respond to any of these questions here.
Okay, there it is. Okay. Well, in the video, how it prioritizes the design coordinations, I like how the video itself, I wasn't sure which program that they used. It showed in a simplistic way without us having to like explain to, the stakeholder or the community what was the problem and then why it's the problem and then how we fix the problem. So it was very clean on just watching it and understanding. So that's what I was most impressed with, along with the message. Is
That's
the
a good
presentation.
point. I appreciate you naming that, Melissa, because a big part of your work, especially interacting with multiple stakeholder groups, is telling a story that connects with them, right? And so you pointing out
Yeah.
the ability for the video to connect with you and make things plain as far as the process of it is a big takeaway. And it's something to consider as a designer, when you're connecting with a lot of your stakeholders. How do you convey this in a way that resonates with them and helps them not only achieve their goal, because a lot of your stakeholders have their vision, but how do you ensure that that speaks to what you're designing for them? So that's spot on. Thank you for sharing that, Melissa. Philip?
Oh, sorry. So yeah, my key takeaways were just that a lot of the determinants of how a community looks is kind of invisible and kind of this embedded and process thing. And so it becomes really important to us as landscape architects sort of to like find or like uncover like what are these systems, like how is it that how is it that, for example, like Jackson, Mississippi's water pipes take forever to get fixed, right? Like how do they break and how do they take forever to get fixed? And so I think, and we see this a lot at Cal Poly too, like with our use of GIS, like there's been a really awesome trend lately in terms of like sort of like finding these different determinants of health and sort of kind of directing design interventions toward where they would be most beneficial equity wise. I think that's like an example of what we would or how that would proceed.
Yes, as a practitioner, I love data, right? I think data is super critical in this work, especially for particular stakeholder groups. But data on a map is helpful for everyone because it allows folks to see where the concentration of the issue lies, and it allows for a great case to be made around where investments should go. So I know in my professional work, I've used GIS mapping as a very great tool to convey that at the city level for a lot of the projects that I've led and been a part of. But GIS is a dynamic tool. But just like we're talking, right? Melissa, shout out to that. Yes. Just like we're talking about like this idea of where people of color stay and that most people of color in comparison to white households live next to these places that cause a lot of harm due to pollution, that can all be seen visually through a map. And that definitely allows for those claims to be made and for those things to be, addressed and brought up. And so oftentimes when you're making a case, being able to map it is helpful. And leveraging tools like GIS to communicate why your data is important is super a great tool to use for sure. Let's have one more person share before we go on break. Who wants to take us to break? Chase, I'm not sure if you got a chance to share.
I did. I talked about why it's important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Baying, would you like to share? Awesome. In the chat. Perfect. You can respond to the last question. So while we're waiting for Payne to put that in the chat, one of the things that I think is important with the social determinants of health, especially in regards to your designs, is it allows you to prioritize where you want to focus your intervention. It also helps you prioritize which stakeholder groups are most important to engage, because not every stakeholder is relevant for every social determinant of health focus area, right? So we'll learn a little bit more about that when we come from break. But I'm really excited that you all are seeing this relationship between this conversation of social determinants of health and the relationship it has to your designs, and the considerations you can make and inform as a result. We'll have one more person share out, Isaac or Jonathan. Let's go to you, Jonathan.
Which one did you?
Any question that you would like to respond to?
Let's see. Sorry, I'm like blanking.
Well, it does look like Payne put something in the chat, so I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about it, but feel free
Okay.
ready to respond to any of those questions. In my opinion, my understanding which social factors have the greatest impact on health, landscape architects can prioritize design elements that maximize health benefits. For example, designing walkable neighborhoods, creating more green spaces, and ensuring accessibility to public facilities can all be prioritized. Those are perfect examples, right? Accessibility is a big one. Green space, right? And the benefits of green space and making sure that that's a big part of your design considerations, and even the types of green that you implement, whether it's, friendly to the natural environment or native to it, it's really important, right? And then also the idea of walkable neighborhoods, right? A lot of big things are about health. And if your community is walkable, that is going to encourage people of all ages, right, to get outside, experience the neighborhood, and that'll help them with their cardio, right, and staying healthy and active. And that's a big part of designing as well. So thank you for sharing that. That's some really good stuff there. Jonathan?
Okay, so yeah, my main takeaway was like as you said, like a better community or a neighborhood would like incentivize people to take better care of their like health and stuff, and in turn just like make the community a better place just by having like better green space or walkable areas, like having nice parks. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you all for folks who shared out. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll get back into our lecture when we return. Let's take about a 5-minute break. So that means we'll be back, let's say 7:32. Sounds good? See you in about 5 minutes. All right. We should be coming back now. Go ahead and put your thumbs up if you are back with me. So I see a few thumbs coming up. Give folks a couple more seconds to get back. Awesome. All right, so we are getting into the social determinants of health. Social determinants of health are the conditions in the environments where people are born, live, learn, work, play, worship, and age that affect a wide range of health functioning and quality of life outcomes and risk. There are 5 main categories for the social determinants of health, and I think this is a really great framework for you all to consider in regards to the areas, let's say your intervention or your design focus will impact, right? Education, access, and quality, healthcare and quality, neighborhood and built environment, social community context, economic stability. So one of the things that I like to say is the landscape is always present. So no matter where you're at, whether you're like, let's say in the education space, that's not, let's say, a place you think about a landscape, but the landscape is definitely present there. You know, the schools pay a lot of money to invest in their landscapes. But what type of outcome are they intending to get out of that, right? So that's a big thing. Even in healthcare facilities, there are oftentimes beautiful landscapes, right? And there's big reasons for that, right? You know, the comfortability, aesthetics, really looking at how folks experience the site in relation to their healing process. So all of those things are really, really critical. Also, when we're talking about neighborhood and the built environment, I think that's a big area where landscape comes into play. People think about parks, people think about, you know, sidewalks and trees. Social and community context, again, when we're talking about parks, a lot of times social things happen, community things happen in these landscape spaces. And then also landscapes can be leveraged for economic opportunity, whether that's employment as a landscaper, or you can even think about economic opportunity as far as like what the site can be used for. A lot of times you can lay out a part of the site to leverage for economic opportunity, whether that be like a farmer's market or like a swap meet, right? Like how are you leveraging the space for economic opportunity, and how are those considerations being built into your designs? So again, we're thinking about the neighborhood and the built environment. Let's get some volunteers who wants to read neighborhood and built environment. Feel free to come off mute and read number 1.
The goal is to create neighborhoods and environments that promote health and safety. Sorry, Professor, I can't hear you.
It's always that mute button, isn't it? What does that mean to you, Carla, from a landscape architect perspective?
So that means that the environment that we are creating are, you know, you feel at home, you feel that no one's that you can feel comfortable in it, that, you know, you wouldn't be harmed by a failed sidewalk or so something, an environment that you feel comfortable in. Or that you can thrive in even.
Nice, thank you so much, Carla, for sharing that. Who wants to read number 2? Manuel?
Yeah, so number 2 is healthcare and quality, and then the goal is to increase access to comprehensive, high-quality healthcare services.
Okay, this is a tough one, but how would you relate this back to landscape design?
Well, there's like research that says that landscape and like green open spaces actually improve the health of people and increase life expectancy. So I think in that way, designing spaces for people to kind of relax and just like forget about the day-to-day, traffic and work and all that. So creating those spaces, I think, is how we connect landscape to the health and quality of people's lives. Yeah, I think that's one connection.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Manuel. Who wants to take number 3?
I can read it.
Awesome.
So social and community context, the goal is to increase social and community support. One way we could do this is create public spaces that you can rent out to the community for like flea markets or just support the mom and pop shops. Yeah, that's just one.
Awesome. Awesome. I like that. Increased social and community support. Those are oftentimes how community gather, right? They gather at these places where they can connect, markets, farmers markets, flea markets, things like that. So those are really great spaces to create social and community support. What about number 4?
I can read it.
Awesome.
Increase educational opportunities and help children and adolescents do well in school.
Okay. That's number 5, but let's go ahead and do that one.
I'm
How would you
sorry.
connect that back to landscape architecture?
I would connect that. Well, I know something that is increasing in schools is learning gardens and getting students involved with growing, their own produce and improving access to food and educating kids on that. So I think landscape architects can be involved in projects like that.
Nice. That's a good point. And it's super important, right? I think students learn better in hands-on environments. And there's a lot that we need to do and start in regards to like making sure the next generation is thinking green and knows how to leverage, green space or farming, not only for like, let's say, social benefits, but even personal benefits, right? How they can use plants to clean the air, keep the air in their room purified, things of that nature. Uh, let's go back to economic stability. Who wants to talk about that one, number 4?
I'll go.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
No, do you want
You
me?
both,
I can okay.
you both can go. Who wants to go first?
Okay, I'll go first then. Okay, so this reminds me from today, social and community context. The goal is increase social and community support. So when I went through my walkthrough today, there was a young man that he worked on the site, and so he was employed by the city to keep the greens and everything like going within the enclosed area. So it was making jobs for the community where that's a paid job to go in and take care of this public food space.
So that sounds like both of them, right? Social community context as well as economic stability. Because a lot of these opportunities when you're talking about maintenance, right? Who's going to manage the maintenance of a site? And what opportunities are you creating for that, for the folks that need it the most? And that's a really great example. Philip, you want to jump in there?
Oh man, I like that maintenance. That's big. I would say like if we could increase the health in a community, let me think of a quick example. Like if you had a shade efficient community, right, and you threw up a bunch of trees and maybe were able to shade some living spaces, you might make it a little easier for that person to get up, to have that energy to go to work. Decreasing the rate of chronic illnesses like pollution and things like that. Also, like, so I guess like, there's like Monica was talking about kind of like a directly employing kind of people through your design, but then I also think that like just sort of putting people at less of a disadvantage, right, to be able to go to work and earn money, you know, and support themselves.
Yeah, that's spot on. That is spot on. One of the things that happens when you're in these communities is that there's like a tax, right? There's a tax for poverty, there's a tax for inequity, and you oftentimes end up spending more money for services or for your healthcare, right? Because you're in these environments that increase impact of like negative outcomes regards to health. So you end up having to spend more money. But if you don't have money to spend, or you don't have, like, let's say you can't afford insurance, then the quality of healthcare is even less. So there's this like residual impact. So adding things from an intervention perspective that helps decrease those experiences, especially in these urban spaces or historically harmed spaces or historically impacted communities, is super, super critical. What we'll be prioritizing this semester in relation to the social determinants of health are these three, right? 1, 3, and 4. Neighborhood and built environment. There's a few outcomes projected by the CDC that this is supposed to impact, which includes increase the proportion of people whose water supplies meet safe Drinking Water Act regulations, reduce the amount of toxic pollutants released into the environment, reduce health and environmental risk from hazardous sites, reduce the number of days people are exposed to unhealthy air, or even heat, right? Heat exposure. Like we're experiencing this heat wave, right? A lot of you talked about on your community walkthroughs, there was lack of shade. So how can that be mitigated through either the planting of trees or even hardscape infrastructure like tarps or designed overheads at bus stops that help regulate the amount of heat that folks are exposed to, especially in the hottest days that we're experiencing now. From the social and community context, some of the goals identified are to reduce anxiety and depression in family caregivers of people with disabilities, our developmental challenges, reduce the proportion of children with parent or guardian who have served time in jail, increase the proportion of voting age citizens who vote. So, right, all of these different components of how do you create communities of care through this social community context. And that can be done through the landscape space, right? Creating spaces that are designed for gathering, spaces that are designed for engaging folks, let's say in the voting process, or spaces where folks are getting support with their economic needs, which is preventing them from choosing alternative economic pathways. Another opportunity is economic stability, reduce the proportion of adolescents and young adults who aren't in school or working, reduce the proportion of people living in poverty, increase employment in working age people, increase the proportion of children living with at least one parent who works full-time, right? So these are really big goals in relation to social determinants of health. But it's really exciting because, again, a lot of times your design interventions can be rooted in some of the considerations that are coming up from the engagement that you're having with your stakeholder groups. So the cool thing of like, well, how do I know which goals to prioritize? How do I know what I need to be thinking about? A lot of that insight will come from the research and engagement that you do with your stakeholder groups, right? And so we talked about during your walkthrough, you identify some stakeholders. Sometimes it was, your city council. Sometimes it was different business owners or families and residents that lived in your community. So really identifying your stakeholder groups, again, is an important way to prioritize what considerations that you're going to make in your design, because you get that insight from, again, the research of your stakeholder groups and the engagement with them. Looks like I'm having some issues with the internet. And give me 1 second. Got some tech difficulties. All right, you should be able to see my screen. Who are the stakeholders? Give me thumbs up if that is correct. Awesome, I see some thumbs up. Thank y'all for your patience with this these tech issues. But so who are the stakeholders? You know, it's important to do research and engagement with your stakeholder groups because it allows you to again get insight on what is most important for the site, what constraints exist from the site. You know, sometimes there's policy constraints that you need to be mindful of. There's budget constraints. Sometimes there's social constraints. You know, the community has really strong opinions about, you know, who you're partnering with to develop the site, and they don't want it there, right? So you have to be mindful of what those considerations are, or how do you mitigate those considerations when you're dealing with a specific site. There's environmental constraints, right? There may be like endangered species or trees on the site where, you know, you have to be mindful of what you're bringing to the site in that regard. So you do your stakeholder engagement for several reasons, but some of them you see listed here: communicating information, understanding the stakeholders' perceptions, and managing expectations. Again, you want to be as transparent as possible, especially as it pertains to your constraints. You never want to, you know, make someone feel that what they gave you as far as an idea or an opportunity is going to happen if there's a constraint that exists that just doesn't allow it, right? And so you want to be as transparent as you can while you're engaging your stakeholders and definitely manage those expectations. You also want to identify and mitigate impacts and risks. A lot of cities, right, legally are risk adverse. So you want to, again, be mindful of the different policy constraints that come up. And oftentimes building alignment to, let's say, policy initiatives or efforts that exist are really great pathways to achieving your outcome goal. So let's say a city has an initiative to plant native plants, right? You can identify that as points of alignment in relation to your project, because your project is going to plant native plants, just like the city is trying to do, right? So having that stakeholder alignment is critical in framing why your design intervention is important or relevant to your stakeholder groups. It allows you to maximize priorities, right? Again, there are certain priorities that are just completely in disagreement with each other across your stakeholder groups. But then you'll see some of their interests or values are definitely aligned, and you can prioritize those opportunities because you see that consistent agreement across the stakeholder group with that particular matter. And so that, again, allows you to start building that trust and that consensus across stakeholder groups. It helps you in facilitating decision-making. If you know that there's going to be too much pushback on something, you don't want to do it, right? It'll waste time. It'll be a waste of time. You'll do it, and then you'll end up having to do it all over again. It allows you to address incidents or grievances. Again, if you have issues across stakeholder groups, it allows you to be aware of that, and it'll probably even allow you to address some of that, do some reconciliation across stakeholder groups with your work potentially. But it's important to understand what some of those challenges are, because again, those can be barriers to the completion of your project if you're unaware of them. And then also it allows you to manage your commitments. Again, when you're talking about what you can execute, you want to be sure that you can commit to what you are actually able to do in regards to the time constraints, environmental, policy, social, economic constraints, right? So really being managing those commitments and those expectations, again, across those stakeholder groups. So for this course, the priority is really leveraging different tools and practices to ensure that your stakeholder engagement for your projects that you do in, let's say, your labs or in your professional spaces are very much so well done, so that, again, you can have confidence when you're conveying across stakeholder groups how your design was informed. So there are three main stakeholder groups that, you know, need to be prioritized in this conversation throughout this semester. And it includes government, community, and the environment. The environment oftentimes isn't considered a stakeholder, but I want you all to really be considering the environment as a stakeholder always. And I think as landscape architects, that probably comes easier for you than, let's say, just any regular person. They may not see the environment as a stakeholder, but we know that the environment is an active participant in all of the experiences that we have. There's this saying that I hate, right? Because I feel like it completely omits the environment as a stakeholder. It's if a tree falls in a forest and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? And for me, I'm like, well, no one's around to hear it, but it sounds like it's surrounded by other trees, right? So I assume that, yes, it makes a sound, and the other trees will hear it, right? So again, that's just another pushback on the environment is a stakeholder. Let's see, someone in the chat. Yes, right? Yep. And it's important to, again, always be thinking about the environment as a stakeholder and thinking about how, let's say, your design interventions will impact the environment, or how the environment will impact your design. That's something to consider. So when we're thinking about the government, we're thinking at all levels of government, local, state, and federal. Oftentimes policy that's informing your design can and will come from all levels of government. There are, you know, local ordinances that you need to follow, zoning laws, zoning policies, as well as like state things like CEQA that you need to be mindful of. And then at the federal level, you have EPA standards. And that's important to be mindful of because, again, you don't want to be on the wrong side of legislation. Yes, Carla, I agree with that. We are detached from the environment in a lot of ways. But I do think in most recent years, there's been a lot of movement to like reconnect people to the environment. And I know for myself, being a part of the College of Environmental Design has definitely been a part of that. And you all, right, connect me back to the environment in the ways that you all convey your projects and your work. So I think we're in good company, but it is true. I think as a society, we're definitely detached from the environment. Yes. Some other government players are non-governmental organizations. Those are like represented by these like regional organizations like SCAG. There's one in San Diego, I think it's called SANDAG. But these are like non-governmental organizations, but they work with government organizations to address regional issues at scale. And they're big players in the work that happens. Also, neighborhood councils. These are volunteer government officials, oftentimes at the community level. They don't, get paid for their services, but they are oftentimes recognized at the municipality level as government officials, and they inform, what decisions should be made on behalf of their community, and really make sure that like the unique issues that their community face are front and present with the council members or supervisor districts that they represent, right? And so they are really critical points of engagement. A lot of information can come from your neighborhood councils. They hold a lot of insight at the community level, what's happening, and also can really inform what considerations, the community has for any projects, designs, or landscape considerations that folks are making. Community for me, I think is encompassing of a few groups, right? It can be many of these groups again can be broken down, but when I think of community, it includes community-based organizations, small businesses, and residents. So we're not talking about corporate businesses like Walmart or Target or Jack in the Box or McDonald's, but we're really thinking of small businesses like mom and pop stores. Now, again, at the community level, let's say corporate players can be, let's say stakeholders, but oftentimes we're talking about small businesses. So think of that in the way, but also, yeah, think of the ways that, let's say, Target can be a sponsor to your landscape intervention. If you're thinking about economic opportunity, you may have like corporate players in your community that may want to invest in the beautification of it, right? Through community benefits efforts that they already have in play. So small businesses and even corporations. But for the sake of this, we're really thinking of the small businesses and the opportunities that may come for them. And also residents, right? Homeowners, but also renters. A lot of communities of color have more renters than they have homeowners. And a lot of conversation you'll see and legislation or ordinances are really focused on homeowners. But oftentimes you'll see that sometimes the homeowner is not even local. They may live in another country. They may live in another state or another area of the county, right? But the renter is there as well. So how do you get insight from residents that are renters and homeowners? Which may have competing interests, right? So it's important to hear from both of those groups. And then also with the environment, you have the environment that includes, right, like native plant species, native animals that are dependent on the environment, as well as the climate of the environment, right? There's different things that you want to consider in regards to your design, and whether or not it needs overhead protection from the sun. In a place here like Southern California, where you get, sun year round, you may want to have that as a consideration. I know one time I went to Arizona and it was even hotter than it is out here in Southern California. And a lot of the places out there have the sprinkler systems where throughout the day to help mitigate the heat, they have these sprinkler systems that mist water onto people outside of venues in places where they're eating or there's restaurants. They need to install those here in Southern California. I think that that'll be a good feature. The Olympics are coming. Maybe that's something that may want to consider. But yeah, maybe those type of things, especially during the summer months, are something that we would like enact and start to spray water mist on people. So those are things that you may want to consider in regards to the regional climate, for example. Any thoughts on this slide in relation to who are the stakeholders? Yeah. Any thoughts coming up for folks? Anyone want to come off mute, give thoughts?
I have a question.
Yes.
What, and if you touch upon on this already, would schools be part of community, maybe?
Yes, schools definitely are a part of community. In this context, I think we can put them there because, for example, they have their own part of the social determinants of health. But in this context with community, that can also be someone that you can add there. So community-based organizations, small businesses, residents, and let's say for your site, because there's an elementary school across the street from it, let's say that elementary school should be a part of that conversation. A high school is right there. Yeah, that high school should be a part of that conversation, right? There may be considerations for safe routes to school that are landscape considerate, right? Some of the folks were talking about folks walking across this traffic, right? Oftentimes those are students trying to get to and from school in the morning or after school, right? And so having more landscape features that make it safe for them to cross is a big thing, right? So yeah, I think that that's a great point, Carla. Thanks for mentioning. Any other questions or comments that folks are coming up for folks? So yeah, when you're thinking about your stakeholders, it includes employees, suppliers, customers, communities, government, regulators, industry associations, financial institutions, like whoever, especially for your site, right? Because your stakeholders and which ones you may prioritize may change depending on where your site is located. But once you know where your site is, you do want to investigate who the stakeholders are and why, like, again, you have the research part, which again, I would call is like your desktop work, where you're just like, okay, I'm in this area. These are the businesses that are here. Okay, there's a bank there. There's a school there. You're just doing your desktop research. And then there may be like articles that you can learn about, the mom and pop store and how they just got awarded a grant. That insight, that can all be a part of your desktop research, right? And then you want to transition into your direct engagement. So be mindful of that. You start with your desktop research, you gather as much information as you possibly can, and then you start to prioritize which of those stakeholders do you think you need to engage to get more insight or feedback to inform your project or your process. So this semester, we're also going to be working with the narrative framework. This is going to be a really, really great tool that I hope you all can use well into your careers. But there's a few reasons why we're going to be using narrative and why this is important in regards to stakeholders, right? When you're talking to your stakeholders, you want to get them to tell their story. You want to understand their challenges. You want to understand their values. It's important for you to like really dig into the solutions that they want to see. And the idea around this is you want to identify social and environmental landscape intervention opportunities in the existing landscape. It allows you to investigate challenges and successes present in the landscape project target area. It allows you to develop design solutions that connect the dots between social and environmental justice for your site, right? Because there's this social component, but then like, again, the environment is also a stakeholder. So you're mitigating both of those realities there. It helps you inform decision makers through design proposals with your site analysis, your design precedents, your written narrative, which will include those constraint considerations. And it helps you synthesize the information collected into your final project presentation. So this is really the flow of what we'll be learning this semester. And we'll take it box by box. But today we really wanted to just go over this idea of like understanding who the stakeholders are, right? And really getting into how to identify those stakeholders and understand what you want to get from them, right? So these, again, are going to be some great tools that we'll be using to navigate that process. Another thing that's going to be really important is like understanding how to move folks through the conversation. So we'll also be using the roadmap, right? This roadmap tool that'll help you understand again, how to move the conversation forward and your process forward. Sometimes you may take a step back, you may have to take 3 steps forward, but you'll always know what part of the process you're in. So you employ the narrative strategy to identify barriers and opportunities in your existing system. It helps you investigate challenges and success, again, in whatever issue area that you're talking about, whether it's the economic, social, and community context or the environment, right? It also helps you develop solutions that connect the dots between those barriers and opportunities. It helps you inform those decision makers, and it helps you evaluate the results, right? And so when you're moving, let's say, your stakeholders through the process, you want to be able to communicate to them what part of the process you're in. Are you in the process where you're identifying those barriers in the existing system and you're getting the insight around that? Are you in the process of investigating those challenges and successes and you need to learn from them what actually works here, right? Because you don't want to come into a site and destroy the thing that works the best for the community. You probably want to enhance that feature. So again, you want to get that insight on like what's working for them. Also, you want to develop those solutions and connect the dots between those gaps, right? Again, if something's working, you want to keep it there and enhance it. The other thing is really figuring out, okay, how does this align to the decision makers? Sometimes these things are related to your company, maybe it's related to the city, right? But those decision makers are making these decisions based off of policy considerations, and your work may be aligned to a policy that they're working on, whether it's like, for example, at the city level, the Green New Deal, or at the county level, the Our County Plan, right? These are different legislative priorities that, like, say, the local government has made. And so it's like, how do you leverage your work, your insight, your engagement to inform those or align with, you know, let's say those legislative priorities. And then you also want to have a feedback loop, you know, especially in the design process, especially landscape architecture. The life cycle of your design might not complete for a whole year, right? Or even 2 years, depending on what you're planting on the site. So even understanding how you engage your stakeholders to get the feedback and the impact of your site is going to be a part of your design process, right? And ensuring that, you know, if there's changes that need to be made, if your site is a site that doesn't have any maintenance, are you going to be planting plants that require low maintenance, right? Now, oftentimes that requires you to go the natural route. So those are things that you want to be mindful of. And so again, this semester, we'll walk through each of these boxes step by step. And so by your midterm, you should be able to connect this box, complete this box in relation to your what is it, your studio projects, or a professional project that you have, or maybe a project that came out of one of the case studies that we'll be looking at. All right. So yeah, we got a really cool semester ahead, but I do want to open it up for any questions that you all had around the narrative canvas tool that we'll be using this semester, or even anything about the road mapping. Okay, so I will ask, do you feel like there's a hierarchy within these stakeholders? Does it depend on the project? Yes, it depends on the project. However, the way that I approach this is from a community-centered perspective, right? So this is community-centered perspective. You want to really prioritize the most historically harmed communities, the most impacted communities, depending on your site, right? And that's important because they're the end user to the site. And oftentimes they're the last person to have an input. So again, with what we're learning this semester, you're learning how to have a community-centered perspective. Now, at the end of the day has to end. No, that's a funny quote that's been going around. But at the end of the day, you work for a company, you work for the city, you work for the state, you work for the county. So they're going to move forward with what they want to invest in. So let's say you've done all your research, you've made a good case, and they're like, yeah, we're going to prioritize this, right? More than likely, they're going to have a lot of your considerations a part of what the ultimate outcome is. What happens is when you're doing your proposals, when you're developing your, projects, the way that I look at it, I've been doing policy and design for a while now, you're really pushing your wish list with all of your considerations, right? You prioritize what you can based off of all of those considerations, so you make a good case, right? But at the end of the day, your stakeholder that's paying for the project is the one that, is going to decide what is going to be invested in. So your job is to develop a project that is considerate of community and the environment, in alignment with what, let's say, your client or your employer's goals are. you always want to lead with that. And so, for example, when we go through the Canvas tool, you'll identify existing policy constraints or opportunities, right? So there may be like a policy window that says, again, that they want to plant trees. They want to plant 1,000 trees by X date. Well, because your project is working towards that goal, you would be in alignment with that policy opportunity. So with that stakeholder, you could kind of convey to them, look, this is in alignment with your priority, your priorities. And it also centers community perspective. And this is what we got in regards to community on how this project will benefit them. So you're really encouraging the city to do what they want to do, but in alignment with what the community's vision is. And as a person that's managing all stakeholders, you kind of have a purview that gets to see that. And oftentimes the city needs you to be there, right? The city needs you to have that vision because the city has to appease everybody. So the more stakeholders you engage and the more stakeholders you have insights about, it helps, let's say, the stakeholder that's paying you do a better job. So they'll love you and appreciate you for it and probably even pay you more money for it. But it does take your due diligence to be able to inform that, right? So in regards to the hierarchy, let's say the hierarchy is the stakeholder that's paying you. You want to understand what their priorities are, what their policy focus is, and figure out how to build your project in complete alignment with that. There's 4 things that I focus on when I'm, let's say developing a proposal or a community engagement plan. It's alignment across stakeholder groups, authority through policy windows, because let's say when I say this is what we're doing, I want to feel confident that it's aligned to, let's say, the internal company policy or let's say the local legislation that is necessary to get the project done. I want to be confident in that. So I make sure that it's aligned to policy. And then I look for accountability. And the accountability piece is really the evaluation, right? Looking at that feedback loop. How was your project experienced? And the action plan piece of it, right? That's the 4th piece. But the action plan is like, how do you put all 3 of those things together? The alignment of stakeholder groups, the authority of the policy window, and the accountability of impact, right? Because a lot of times we propose, we want this project to have this impact. We want this project to have this outcome. But how are we measuring that over time and confirming that that actually is what happened? And what are we doing if that is not what happened, right? Are we going back to fix it? Have we set money aside to mitigate any negative impacts that happen from a project design so that that can be rectified or addressed? Are we ensuring that we're going back after the project is complete to re-engage the stakeholders and ensure that it had the intended outcome that was expected, right? Like, what is that accountability piece and how are you building that out into your process? And so again, this semester we'll be using this tool to develop that, not only for ourselves, but first we'll be able to use the tool to see how it's done in other projects, right? But once we do it for ourselves towards our midterm and our final project, we'll be able to say, okay, I can use this tool for my projects, right? But we'll be navigating this in relation to other projects. And I'm really excited about that to help you all see the benefits of the engagement piece. But again, leveraging these tools to facilitate that engagement to ensure that it's effective and actually helps you inform the design considerations that you're making. Any thoughts or comments? Any other thoughts or comments on that? All right. Well, with that being said, that's all I have for you today. We're finishing a little early, about 25 minutes early today. What I want you all to do is take advantage of this time and get your walkthrough assignment completed. But that ends our lecture for today. This link will be available on Canva. And I usually upload the lectures to YouTube. So I plan to do that again this semester. But don't hold me to a timeline for the upload to YouTube. However, once I do get them onto YouTube, I will send an email out for you all to know, and I'll also upload the link to Canvas. Yes. I see your hand, Carla.
Yes. I just have a question about, I see another assignment posted about reading and research.
Yes. So that you will have, we're reading the assigned book this semester. It's about community engagement for design. Let me stop share. So, okay. So in relation to the reading and research assignments for the book that we're reading this semester, let me pull it up. Yes, so we are reading All-Inclusive Engagement in Architecture Towards the Future of Social Change, right? So this book is really teaching you some really great techniques on community engagement for your design process. The first chapter is assigned to read right now, okay? So that is posted on Canvas. The first chapter is split up into 6 parts: pedagogy of engagement, modes of interaction, categorizing and value community engagement, engaged teaching, critical conscientization in design education for social impact, the limitation of design pedagogies that respond to humanitarian crises, the empathic designer, emotional intelligence in design, setting criteria to assess educational value of engagement, Bella Vista, regional solutions of global significance, the pedagogic value of architecture co-design, how embedding students within communities can challenge societal inequities, right? So that's the first chapter, split up into those 6 parts. The purpose of these assignments, so you'll have these throughout the semester. This assignment is designed to familiarize students with using the different tools. Each student will read a chapter of all-inclusive engagement and architecture towards the future of social change. Each student will then create an Adobe Spark or PowerPoint presentation using images and writing to reflect on their key takeaways from the chapter. Over the coming weeks, the presentation will be loaded to Canvas, and students are required to review the presentation and comment on the content of the chapter. Please let me know if you need any help completing this assignment. I've also added tips for reading the chapter that really give you some really great insight on things that you may want to do to retain the information effectively. But yes, again, throughout the semester, you'll have these different reading assignments. Usually I assign a lot more books, but this semester we're only reading 1 book. So we're breaking it down by chapter. And then towards the end of the semester, or well, after we're reading this book, we'll start to go into some case studies, right? And that's going to be really exciting to really match what you're learning using the narrative Canvas tool and through this book this semester to the case studies that we'll be reviewing. So yeah, be on the lookout for more readings to come. I think I'll be pushing those out every 2 weeks, but go ahead and read those, develop your PowerPoints with your takeaways. Your PowerPoint should be 8 to 10 slides, and we'll just get this done. You definitely want to, really use text and images to convey your takeaways. So that's a big thing. I love when students get creative and use imagery to convey some of their takeaways as well. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, those reading and research assignments will be coming, and it will be on that assigned book for the course.
And Professor, just to clarify, so for this first one is due Monday, September 16th. And it's for the whole chapter 1?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions regarding the today's lecture or any posted assignments? All right, be on the lookout for this video to come someday soon. And if any questions come up, feel free to reach out. I do have office hours by appointment on Tuesdays from 8 to 10 a.m. So if you do want to meet with me, feel free to send me an email with a 15-minute slot that is most convenient for you, and we can get you on the calendar. I'll send out a Zoom link for those office hours, and we'll have a really good conversation for that 15-minute slot. Really appreciate y'all time. Did y'all enjoy today's lecture? Thumbs up or down. Might have not liked it. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I'll let you all go, but if folks need to ask any questions, feel free to stick around. I'll be around for about 5 more minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you all.